Hello everyone, I'm Mohammad Rajjaque, and originally I had planned to do this with my colleague Olga Cam, but due to some logistics issue that involves teaching quite late and security locking all the doors in time, she may be a little late. But we are going to talk about money, and we are going to look at it from a very individual and from a very psychological perspective. Oops, there we go. The purpose of this presentation is to introduce the concept of mental accounting and behavioral finance and try to understand how, as individual, the process behind the personal financial decisions that we make as individuals. The expected outcome that we hope to achieve through this presentation is to help people or whoever is listening to us make more informed day-to-day financial decision, mainly by understanding the process by how we as human beings make those decisions. To start with, there are three key parts of this talk today. We will we'll look at the theoretical aspect of mental accounting and how it works, and I will try to use as many examples from real life, from what I have experienced myself and what I have seen people around me experiencing. And then I will try to extrapolate these to develop an understanding of the concept, what we call our money story. I will also try to capture how those psychological aspects are quite getting intensified due to the combination of what we call social media and fintech making transactions very different from what they used to be just 10 years ago. Right, there we go. There we start now. Let's just assume, for argument's sake, that you have won a draw for £1,500. It's not a huge amount of money. It's a good substantial amount of money. What will you do with this money? Will receiving this draw or receiving this prize make you feel different? The response that I normally get to this question from my audience is it definitely makes them feel happy. It makes them feel different. And most of the people decide to do something that they would not do normally. For example, they would like to buy a TV, go on a holiday, or if you are more or less like me, splurge a little on books, and maybe think about buying a new screen for a computer or something of that sort. The question is, most of us do receive salary every month, but that does not make us feel that jubilant or that great. You will also feel different incomes that comes from a different source, like unexpected tax refunds, if you get gifts in the form of birthday money, if you get suddenly a bonus from an employee. I know working at the university we don't get bonus, but obviously if you are working at somewhere else you may get that. Logically, and the traditional economic theory suggests that the utility of extra unit of income, the additional pound that you are going to receive, is the same, irrespective of what source it's coming from. Or as the saying goes, a dollar is a dollar is a dollar. Then the question is, why do we treat income from different sources differently and tend to spend it very, very differently? The answer lies in mental accounting. And that's the concept that I'm trying to introduce today. Mental accounting is defined. Thaler was the original proponent of this concept. He combined a number of psychological behavior and how we make financial decisions together and develop this concept of mental accounting. And it has been growing very, very fast. You may also hear about behavioral finance, which is very much similar, but works on a bit macro scale. So we define mental accounting is simply a set of cognitive operations or how our brain functions. That's what cognitive operations are, that are used by individuals on an individual level, not on a collective level, or even the households to keep track of financial activities. There are three basic key components that we will try to learn today. We will try to learn how do we frame our decisions. We try to see how mental accounts work. And the last, choice bracketing. How do we make decisions if we have to make one decision after next, after next, after next, or a series of decisions? So the first aspect to understand how our mind as individuals and households work to make decisions is what we need to understand how the framing works. In other words, framing is simply what is, it's pretty straightforward. In order to make a decision, you need some information, and all those information creates a frame for you to make decision. For example, if you have to go out in a car and somewhere, then you have certain variables to consider, how far that place is. Are you going to drive? Are you going to take a bus? And then accordingly, once you have all that information in place, then accordingly you decide the most appropriate course of action. That you are either going to take the car, or if you are going to take a bus, and so on. Similarly, when we make financial decisions, we input a number of information to help us make that decisions. Together, all that information creates the frame for us. And in that frame, we have three. Hey, Olga, good to see you. Right. So I was trying to explain the framing, how framing works for decision making. So value function for our decision making tends to be relative rather than absolute. In the frame of decision, one of the most important thing that we need to decide is what is the value of the good or service that we are going to buy. So what should be the value of a laptop that you're buying, of a shirt for that matter, or glasses that you're going to buy. The issue is we cannot define value very objectively for everything. Just for example, I always use that. This phone, I cannot, I don't know what components go in. I don't know what take the cost of software and everything. How do I decide what should be the value of this phone? One way of deciding for me is to compare it with something that is similar. So what is the next phone that has similar specification costs? And then accordingly, I will decide. So this comparison makes our decisions quite easy. It also creates some incoherency that we will explain in a bit. The second key aspect is that the losses are more sensitive than gain. So if we have to decide, or if we have to choose between making 100 pounds of gain or losing 100 pounds, the losing that 100 pound is going to going to cause us more pain than gaining that 100 pound in quantity terms. If we can quantify the gain, the pain, and the happiness, let's put it that way, losses are more salient for us to notice. And the third is our decisions are impacted by the distance of time that is there between the action and its result. So anything that is happening now, whether you are receiving a bit of a pain or if you are getting a bit of unhappiness from an activity, will be recorded more strongly than its impact in the distant future. Now, let's see how it works. So one of the thing I think I explained about the acquisition utility versus transaction utility is they are not the same. So the value of a good, the true or the intrinsic value of a good or service that we may buy, or what we call the acquisition utility, can be different from the transactional utility that you may see. So for example, if you are on a holiday and you are at a very nice beach next to a 5-star resort and so on, and you decide to go for a drink and you want to buy a beer, the chances are you will be more than happy to pay 5 times the price of that beer at that holiday resort, because your decision at that point of time is very different. You are on a holiday, You want to have a good time. All right. I already have saved holiday money. I can spend it anywhere that I want. Go ahead and do that. But if you are buying the same bottle of beer at a, let's say, a supermarket, that's again, it's in a freezer, it's chilled, similar product as you have at that beach, you are not going to pay anything more than the going retail price of that beer. Just by changing the frame of reference, you are willing to complete the transaction with two very different price. The same happens with brands as well. The marketing people are very smart. They know that they have to create a frame of reference for you to make you pay more. And they do that by creating what we call the brand value. The same t-shirt, which is likely to have been produced by the same person somewhere in Southeast Asia, if I put a logo on it, will be at least 10 times more expensive than the one without a brand logo on it. The quality does not matter. I don't think people, okay, it may be a bit, I'm being a bit judgmental, but most of the time, if you ask someone to differentiate between a branded and a non-branded good, which has the same quality, they in a blind test, they may not be able to identify, but they will be willingly, they were very happy, they will happily pay a much larger price or much bigger price for the branded goods because the frame of reference that has been created for them makes them help them justify that higher price. Right. That also works. The second aspect that we discussed about the loss of losing something and the benefit of gaining something. And this applies quite significantly in personal investment decisions. So if you have been buying in different financial assets for it, like shares or mutual funds or ETFs, you may have noticed that if you invest the same amount of money in two different assets, say, for example, as you see on the slide, I am buying two shares worth £500 each. And after 1 month, one of them goes down. When I bought it, my expectation was that both of them will go up. That's why I invested in them. But one of them went down, another went up. And you need to liquidate one of them, or rather sell off one of them. Most of us, even I did that for a very long time, we were very pleased to sell off the winner, the one that is actually going up, rather than cutting our losses and sell the one that's losing. And it happens. That goes against the basic logic of investing, but that the psychological impact of the psychological tendency to avoid losses is so strong that you don't want to do that. The closing an account is red is always very more painful. And you can relate it with a different example, much closer to home. If you have ever bought an expensive, say, shoe or piece of a cloth, or even an electric gadget that you thought that you are really going to use it, but once you have bought it, you realize that it's that great. If it's a coat, it's very ill-fitting. If it's a shoe, it's not very comfortable. You cannot throw it away. You know that it's only taking place in your wardrobe or in your shoe closet or in your drawer if it's an electronic gadget, and you are not getting the utility that you expected to get from it. But getting rid of it is way difficult because you are supposed to cut your losses, and that is a difficult thing to do. The third aspect of this decision making is how the impact of frame, or rather the time distance, affects our decision making. We call it payment decoupling. If we separate the time of when you pay or receive the money from the impact that you receive from that transaction, then you are likely to take distance impact of that transaction much less seriously. You're not going to worry about what's happening in the future. You're likely to go towards the immediate benefit or consider the immediate loss more strongly. And it is used quite often in different scenario around us. One of the great example of this payment decoupling is credit cards. If you buy things in cash, you have to pay it immediately. It's visible, you see it. Or even if you pay through a debit card, you can see that amount has been deducted from your account almost immediately. Credit cards decouples that. You buy something, but you don't see the amount going out of your account or the cash reducing immediately. So the impact of that, the pain of that money going out for everything that you want to get out of it, or you receive from that transaction, is much, much less significant. And that is why it's very easy to keep spending money using a credit card rather than a debit card, and even difficult spending money with cash. That is also, this impact is much more stronger for part of the community who may not have a very good understanding of numbers, who may find it difficult to comprehend how it works. And that is the reason why things like payday loans become quite, I think up to 3 years ago, payday loans in UK were uh, very successful. Let's put it that way. As far as I know, one of the most famous one that I knew made a couple hundred millions of profit every year. And then the government realized that no, they are actually taking advantage of this psychological impact, and therefore they need to be, there was big on that happened. And the same thing happening with a completely new phenomenon that what we call is buy now, pay later. And Klarna is one of the big name that has appeared on the horizon recently. It's a Scandinavian business. So what they will do is, if you want to buy something on a website, you don't even need to have a credit card to buy it on credit. They will provide you instant credit. And instead of charging an interest to you, they will charge an interest to the seller. Not an interest, but a small fee to the seller. And that is where their profits lies. The problem is that this will facilitate impulse buying much faster. And we already have received credible reports and about it's having a serious impact. The news link that you can see there can be seen to see how damaging this can be to a certain, let's say, section of the society. And this impact is visible. It's psychological. So it is not limited, just related to our financial decisions. It's everywhere. Okay. I will stop before I go to our exercising habits and why it's difficult to quit smoking. We have a question. Do you think is the reason bank introduced contactless payments? The reason why banks introduced contactless payments and why it's promoted so strongly by the government is not that much towards making people spend more money. The reason why governments are so interested in contactless payment because it reduces their cost of printing and managing physical money. Managing money is an expensive, very expensive affair. I think the £5 note that we use costs around 20 pence to produce. And we have to, how should I say, renew the supply around every 3 to 4 years as well. Physically, banks don't want to handle cash. That is, again, expensive. You need to have a security, you need to have people, and so on. And that's the primary motivation behind pushing contactless by the government and by the banks. The impact of that, the unintended consequence of that physical cashless is that it's somehow made some people spend money much more easily, and they're spending more than what they would have otherwise. That was, as far as my opinion is concerned, that was not intentional from the banks or from the government. Right. We went a little sidetracked there. We got sidetracked there. Let's back to our exercise. The reason why the cost of exercising is immediate. You have to take the pen now, but the benefit is sometime in the distant future. And this decoupling effect makes it difficult to start that exercising. The same goes for smoking. The joy of going for a smoke, a quick hit, is now, immediate. But the impact of that is in distant future by way of losing your health. And that makes it much easier to go for that now. Same goes for the reason why people delay saving for retirement. When you start saving for retirement, you have to forego some of the consumption, some of the money that you could have spent on yourself, bit of an entertainment or new TV or things like this has to be set aside for a very long distance future. So the pain is now, the benefit is in distant time, difficult to do. And the same goes for starting a portfolio. A lot of us want to start investing. We want to buy some shares, we want to buy maybe some crypto or whatever it is. But there's a pain. You have to learn how to do it. You have to put yourself out there, you have to open an account, and you may lose a bit of money immediately, and so on. People tend to avoid doing that. But once, because the doing the pain of the cost of doing that now is you have to sit down, you have to learn a few things that you don't know beforehand. You may have to open a few accounts that you are not very familiar with. All that is slightly taxing for a lot of people, especially if you are not familiar with what you are doing. People don't want to go through that immediately, despite knowing for certain that if they do it, the best in the future, if they invest properly for the next 4 or 5 years, it will help them. It does not go through. It's not the intent per se that people don't want. It's the psychological behavior, how we are hardwired to behave, makes it difficult. Right. I'll move on to the second concept of mental accounts. In order to make our decisions, financial decisions easy, we label our expenses. And we also label our wealth and where the income is coming from, all three in different categories. So our expenses, we label them as different budgets. For example, every household is likely to have a food budget. This is the amount of money that I'm going to spend on buying my groceries every week. This is the amount of money that I'll spend on housing or clothes or entertainment and so on. People, depending on their own preferences, hobbies, they may have different categories on that. Then we also label our wealth as different accounts. If I have saved some money, it will be my pension fund. There will be a different pot of money for house purchase that I'm saving for. Or if you have kids like me, you may have a college fund for their education as well. We also label our income in two very distinct, separate categories: the regular income that we get and any windfall. Now, the traditional economic theory, as I said, a dollar is a dollar is a dollar, no matter where it's coming from and where you are spending on. The value of it will remain same, so you should treat each of these equally. But this budgeting facilitates us making some trade-off decision. Should we do this or should we do that? And it also helps us act as a self-control device, so we do adopt it. Let's see how it works. The process of the accounting in our brain, how it works is we first have to notice all the expenses that we are incurring, and then it should be assigned to a proper account, and accordingly you make your decision. For example, small expenses are very less seriously booked. If you buy coffee every day on your way to work, say for £2 a day, for say how many work days we will have? We'll have around 300 work days in a year or so. That will result into £600 of expenditure on coffee. If someone asks you all of a sudden how much you spend on coffee in a year, you may find it difficult to answer. But if you buy one laptop for 600, or in my example, a Burberry jacket for 600, remember it. Okay, I spent that much money on this jacket. So the jacket will be registered much more strongly than the small amount. The overall amount on these two items that you are spending on an annual basis is the same, but the recording or the impact of it is very different. And that is also used by marketing quite cleverly. If you look for an advertisement for a car or anything that is slightly expensive, they will not quote the whole price in one go. They will always present it as a monthly cost. So for example, car for $299 a month versus the whole price of the car, which will be close to 30,000. Because when we do the accounting in our head, justifying a $299 a month expense is much easier. It's much more justified, rational for us, rather than, oh, I'm buying a 30,000 pound car. Actually, you're doing the both things, whether you agree to a 299 a month when you sign the contract or pay the whole price upfront. Right. Now, when budgets are not fungible, when we have very severe restrictions on budget for our self-control, like 100 pounds for entertainment a month, 200 for our groceries. I think 200 is a bit, how should I say, very uh, not that great. So let's make it 400, 400 for groceries and so on. That may create, or that leads people to make some very illogical decisions as well. For example, I have been working for quite some time and gone through a number of colleagues. The number of times whenever we feel like or we decide to go out or do something, they will say that, okay, I cannot do it this month. I'm going to do it next month because this month I already have been out 3 times. But the same person can very happily spend some money on some article of clothing or something else that is discretionary in nature quite easily, because the budget for going out has been spent, but I can spend money on this account anymore. It's also impacting our behavior in terms of where we are going to invest. With the rise of fintech, we have seen an big influx of trading apps, as you want to call it, which will make it very easy for you to buy very risky financial instruments. Let's put it that way. You can buy your options. You can go for ETFs. You can go for spread betting, as we call it. Now, if I go and try and these people, a lot of people who are doing it, they do not have much grounding in finance. They have not practiced, they have not tried to learn these things before doing it. Just because someone else is doing it, they tend to do it in the hope of making a quick buck. It's very similar to going to a bookie shop and buying a ticket. The odds, you don't know, you cannot predict that. You don't do the basic work before you go for that investment. The activities are very same. But in our mind, we assign a budget for betting difficult to justify. But when we assign the same budget for investing, it looks like a great choice. So just because we have two different accounts, one is very much justifiable. It's much very easier to do that. People go ahead and do it. And that is, if you look at that news line there, it is leading to some serious consequences already. And I will not try to be very innocent or very sitting on a very high horse kind of a thing. I also did that. I invested, or not, I should not use the word invested. That means as if I have did the due diligence. I simply went ahead and bought some very, very risky investment products few months ago. And then I ended up writing one article on it about what happened when I bought this and why I was interested to do that. It was a great learning experience for me to understand. I will consider that I have a good experience of financial markets or financial products. Still, I ended up doing that. So if you do not have that much of understanding or experience, then the chances are that that mental accounting process of classifying betting as investing will make you take some very, very bad decisions in the short run, at least. The second aspect of the mental accounting is how do we classify wealth? We divide our wealth in current account, which are like, this is that I have, which I'm going to use for my household expenses, my pocket money, and so on. So this is my current account there. Very easy to spend. Second, we look at our current wealth. That is my current account. This is a bit of money that I have saved if I have a problem. You may also have a bit of a portfolio with your stocks, bond, any other type of, we can see. And the third one is your equity. So you have your pension fund, your, what do you call that? Any other account which is much more restrictive in nature that has been saved for your mortgage payment or child's education fund. And we treat each of these differently. Current accounts, very easy to spend. Current wealth, you can, but you will think twice. Equity, you cannot touch. This is for this, and that is the only purpose this money can be spent. We all do that. It helps us plan, it helps us save, and so on. But that may again lead to some illogical decisions. For example, there are a number of individuals and households who will pay a very high interest rate on loans but will not touch a saving pot which is earning much less than that. Technically, if you have a bit of a loan where you are paying something very high interest, like something like 18%, and a bit of money aside where you are earning only 4%, it will make sense to use that and reduce your cost of interest. In the long run, that will be beneficial for you. But it's very difficult to justify touching a wealth account or an equity account for that matter in our mind. So we try not do that. One of the tips that I have really seen working, not only in my case, but other people as well to whom I have discussed these things, is if you transfer your money to your more restrictive accounts, it makes it difficult for you to justify spending it. And if you set up a direct debit from the account where you receive your salary, that say first or second or third of the month, a certain amount of money goes straight to your saving account, you will definitely save that money instead of thinking about leaving it till the end of the month and then whatever left is your saving. So the idea of save first, pay yourself first. I think there are a number of different personal financial management books that also say that you need to pay yourself first and then spend. You will always end up saving. If you decide to spend first and then save, then it will be very, very difficult. Just because how we treat our mental current account and mental wealth account and the equity account. The third impact is also about how we treat income. Income is categorized in our mind as regular income and windfall income. Regular income is our hard earned money, and it has to be spent very wisely. You have to be very careful. You cannot waste it, you cannot spend it on luxury, and so on. Windfalls, on the other hand, can be enjoyed in relatively quite restricted manner. And these are the source of income that you can spend on luxuries, feel happy about it. Okay, let me complete this slide and then I'll come to this question. So this differentiation that we create, the artificial differentiation that we create for income, depending on the which source it's coming from, creates the impact that we saw, that I explained, or rather the question that I raised at the beginning of this presentation. If you get a 1,500 pound of a windfall by tax or in a bonus, you're likely to spend it on something that you have not thought about on a very long term, something luxury, something frivolous, quick, and so on. Although there's also a very important distinction that I will make here is it is not only about the money that you have received without working for it. If you earn a bit of money by doing a side project, suppose as an academic, I do write content for Pearson, which is a big publisher, and they do pay me a bit of money. I always feel like that is an extra income. I can do whatever I want with it. Sometimes you feel like don't even tell your wife, just go ahead and buy something nice for yourself. It's not that that's an unearned money. I have earned that because of the skill and experience that I have gained over the year, just like my job. But still, I feel differently about that income. And that's just because that's a windfall income, in my opinion. One of the things that I have that I have learned, that if you really want to avoid this windfall effect, postpone all your decision just for a week. Do not spend it immediately. Just think, okay, that's fine. New TV, great, perfectly fine. Let's leave it there and I will decide it next Sunday if I'm going to buy it or not. I have found myself saying no to a lot of those decisions within a very short period of time.
I think also we can
Right.
add, Mohammed, can you hear me?
Yeah, go on.
I think also you've got to remember that you've got different parts of this theory that Mohammed is talking about. So with the rise of your income, you've got the mental accounting that you've got more or bigger budget and you've got this windfall, but equally your frame of references change because the society tells you that for a certain level of income, this is supposed to be a certain type of expenses. So actually, if you back reflect on yourself, you will realize that now that you're earning more, you think that on that type of salary, you should drive a better car, you should live in a better house, better as seen by society, better wear a better brand clothes, because this is kind of building on the psychological level of the social framework for functioning. So that's going back to the first point that Mohammed was discussed. So it's a combination of feeling that this is now an extra money, but equally the expectation of the society that is put on you, the new frame that you inherit by growing into the, because proportionally your income remains the same.
Thank you, Olga. That's a very clear, very quick explanation. You have to be aware of the frame that you are creating for yourself before you spend money. Where the information that the frame is from? Is it coming from comparison? Is it the comparative values that you are considering before spending that money, or is it, or the absolute value of what you are going to get by spending that money? If you do that exercise, you don't need to be fantastic in numbers or finances. If you just do that, it's very quick to see where you are likely to pay much more than the value of this good. The second aspect of this question that you say why expenses seem to grow or shrink to fit your remaining income is, if you leave your money in your current account, your current mental account, instead of transferring it to an account which is your wealth account or your equity account, it's very easy for you to spend that. Current account is for this month itself. So, okay, I thought I was going to spend £5 on groceries. I did only 300. There is 200 left over. What to do with it? And there is always something that you will see in a shop, on a website, or somewhere else that deserves that money of yours. We end up going for that. But if you simply transfer that to your equity account or your wealth account beforehand, even with a 500 budget of grocery, and you have been left with even less than that, you are likely to have the same amount of, or rather the same quality of food that you have decided before reducing that amount throughout the month without having much impact. And it happens to all of us. And it's not that just by knowing it you are going to make good decisions. Knowing that it happens in your mind, or this is how we are hardwired to decide things, will definitely help you make better decisions for yourself. Or being aware of it will identify, okay, this is what's happening right now, and then you can decide. I cannot say that this is right or this is wrong for anyone. They have to decide it for themselves. But just being aware of the parameters that goes behind when we make those decisions will really help us make those decisions. The third one is our mental account of choice bracketing. How do we make decisions when we have some results that we have obtained from a past event? The subsequent choices that we make are affected by our imaginary boundaries. So, for example, if you go to a casino, I have not done that myself, but I have read about it definitely, and have £50 of your money, and then you say, this is what I'm going to use. I'm not going to spend a penny more here. This can, whatever entertainment this gives me, that's it. If I spend it, if I lose it, I'm done. And if you win on your bets and you have 200 pounds, the 100, and you're likely to put that 50 back in your pocket, say I'm done now. And then the 150 that you have won, you're likely to use that in a very risky bets, let's put it that way. Because it's very easy to justify taking risk on what we call the house money, which is essentially, it's your money. You have won it, it's your, you can keep it. Whether which source it's coming from does not matter. But that 150 is now house money for you. Very easy. You go ahead and do that. Casinos know that. They tend to let people win in the beginning and then try to reel them in once they are in. A good example of that is that is this betting shop. 888 is one of the biggest betting shop or betting website or betting web in the company around. If you go to their website, each and every option that they have for you to bet will provide you some free money in the beginning, because they know normally if I go to that site, I'll find it very difficult to justify morally to myself that I am going to bet. But if you get free money, okay, that I can do, not with my money. But once you start it, then it's pretty difficult for a lot of us, difficult to stop. And they know that. And that's how it works. It also works in personal financial investment. And I know that for sure. If you make a good, say, trade, you bought an option. Suppose anyone who has bought a Tesla option in the last week will know right now they would have easily got 10 times of what they had originally invested in just a week's time. If you get that kind of a return, all of a sudden you will start taking much risky investment positions. I have done that. I have seen people doing it. The only reason why the money is mine, whether I have earned it in a prior investment or whether I have earned it through my hard work or via my salary, is irrelevant. It is my money. But in one condition, you are very careful about it. In second, just because of some prior events, you are not that careful, or uh, uh, you are not careful about it. You tend to take much more risk. I would like to quote one example here, how this narrow framing and this mental accounting works. In 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 early 90s, some very smart people in Manhattan realized that whenever it rains, it's very difficult to find taxis in the afternoon. But you get taxis in the mornings pretty easily, whether it rains or whether it does not rain. And they were quite puzzled, because if it's raining, there are more and more people who would like to take a cab to go somewhere or take a taxi to go from point A to point B rather than when it's nice and sunny. So the people driving those taxis should be more willing to operate their taxi when it's raining, and there should be more taxis, but it does not happen. And mind it, this is before the Uber app thing, when the taxi drivers used to make decisions individually rather than an app telling them that they need to go there to earn higher rate and so on. So someone did a survey of taxi drivers that why do you work for longer hours on a rainy day? And then they said the verdict or the opinion that came up or the result that came up, so is that on a rainy day they get more fare in the morning, and they have a kind of a target in their mind that every day they have to make $200 or $300. Once they reach that, they will stop working for the day and they will go home because they have earned it. And that is the reason why on a rainy day they cannot. And the only explanation for this is how the framing that works. The decision frame that they have is, this is my target. If I am done, then I'm done. I'm not going to go beyond that. Right. With that quick grounding in mental accounting, I would like to introduce what we call our money story. Now, this is a new concept that is emerging, and especially in the personal financial advising, it is now being realized that there's no one size fit all approach for suggesting what people should do with their money. Human mind does not make very rational economic decision. The psychological effects are very, very important, and we need to understand them. And as we know that there are a huge number of variables that define our psychological status, they also define and impact our financial decision making. And there are a lot of those offers. Our individual personality, our family background, our peer structure, the community we live in, education that we have, all these things are important. And we need to understand before we can say if one is doing it right or wrong. This example is important. I have picked this screenshot from one of those Reddit forums, and there were more than around 15,000 comments on that. The question asked, if you were poor in the past, and now you are not, what is it that you still find difficult to do despite having the money to do so? And these are the two responses that I picked up. They are were the highest voted. The terrible feeling of guilt for buying something you don't necessarily need, not want, need. And this person underneath is replying that I still feel difficult buying a coat for myself. So the current situation these people are in, or the current financial situation, is not defining their financial decisions. It's the past experiences that they have been carrying. The psychological impact is determining or dictating their financial decisions quite significantly. It also works in the opposite direction. You will find people who come from a very, let's say, rich background, and if the circumstances have changed them, they find it difficult to not spend money. And I have met a number of people who are very bad with money because they have not considered money the way me or someone with my background will consider it. And it's we need to understand that before we can say, okay, you're doing it right or you're doing it wrong. Now, just like with everything that goes, if the society does not have access to professionals, they tend the gap of where people go for advice is filled in. Sorry, I'm really sorry about that. Can you give me 5 minutes? Go talk to mom, please. Really sorry about that. Something happened, which I'll pay the price for saying no at this time. But okay, is if there's a gap in the expertise that people need, that gap will be filled by the self-proclaimed experts. And a good example is the prevalence of alternative medicine that you see in all the parts of the developing countries. And we are witnessing that in the rise of what we now call finfluencers, people who are literally dishing out financial advice on social media. Buy this, do this, buy crypto, send money to me. It's like free for all as of now. And the availability of those retail investment apps where I can buy any share I want, any asset that I want, is making it even more difficult for us and making it very easy for me to make mistake as well. As far as my opinion is concerned, and it's an unqualified opinion based on a very few observation, these influencers, most of the time, they are not making any sense. Only one of them or two of them are the one that I can say, okay, there is some sense in what they are suggesting or what they are asking me to do. These are some of the key statistics that I have picked up from one of the website very, very quickly. A quick look of that will say that the status of personal financial management in our country, and ours is a very well developed, well educated country, is still not good. People are not careful about their finances, and we may have problems going forward if the social security system gets affected from anything. So going forward, what I propose is we need to work on it. We need to talk and share experiences. We need to discuss why the type of financial decision I make is the logic that I have, what experiences make me make those decisions. And I very strongly believe that the personal financial management need to be part of curriculum from the school onward. We cannot expect someone to manage everything in a fantastic manner if we have never taught them to do that. And we do talk a lot about we as a society, we have really moved forward in accepting our mental health as a very important thing. We talk about it, we discuss it, we take care of it. But financial health is still somehow remains a very, very taboo subject. Even in academics, the research on personal financial management from individual perspective is extremely limited. And the focus is, again, either from the gender perspective or it's from the let's say the class perspective. It's not from a very individual comprehensive manner that we have done it. So that's what we do hope that we will start documenting and taking care of it, making us take better decisions for ourselves as a community. These are some of the resources. I think Lynette will definitely post those slides somewhere for everyone to access. So if you are interested, I would definitely recommend the Theller's book called Nudge. And I will also suggest for the people who are younger than me, Uagba's book, We Need to Talk About Money, where she has talked about her experiences of how she has been making financial decisions, why she got frustrated with her situation, and then she realized that the reason does not lie with her, but the way we perceive things. And it's a fantastic read to understand yourself and why we feel the way we feel about money. I'm now going to stop here. Myself and Olga are still here. If you have any questions, we will be more than happy to answer that. Olga, do
I
you want to
think,
take that one? You're good with
yeah, I
giving
think
tips.
no, it's going back to all the points in Mohammed's presentation, but the main one is to reflect on your own behavior. It's because once you start reflecting on that, you will start seeing where is it that you've got emotional attachment that causes you irrational behavior towards the money. So, for example, if you've got a certain framework, for example, associated with a class, like in the UK, it's a very big thing. You know, you buy certain things because you feel like you will belong to a certain class. You can pull back and question whether it's imposed by society and whether actually that goes well with your own financial decisions. But the other thing is, which we've kind of touched upon a little bit, is that that you have to treat it as an income rather than something a part of yourself. So as an accountant or as a financier, you separate yourself from the finances and you look at it as what's coming in and what's going out, incomes and outcomes. And that way you will start treating it with a less sort of sensitive approach and seeing it as part of you, but rather sort of what's going through your accounts on a day-to-day basis.
I will add to that, and that is coming from my personal experience. You need to talk about it. If you see someone who makes a financial decision different than you, for example, I do not buy very expensive mobile phones. The most expensive that I have money I have spent on mobile phone is £175 for the one that I have right now. And I see people buying phones which cost upward of £1,000. You need to talk to them. Why do they do that? And then you need to build that perspective into why you are doing that is different from them. Why are you spending more money onto something than someone else? Or why are you spending way less money onto something than someone else? Why you are saving differently than someone else? Talk to them. Once we start talking, we will appreciate how we make those decisions. Once you know how you are making that decision, it's very easy for you to identify what's likely to be the logical way of doing it and what's not, rather than someone else telling you. So we need to discuss, just like we talk about I'm very stressed, I'm going for a walk. We know that connection well now, but we don't know I'm stressed. Why? Difficult, because we don't talk about it, we are not aware of it, it's not mainstream.
I think there's this question about CBT. I presume it's cognitive behavioral theory and our emotional intelligence. I think this is getting quite deep. I think this is probably slightly, I would say, outside mine and Mohammed's point for commentary. However, there is a lot of behavioral path to finances, which has been identified in the previous literature. And a lot of it requires reflection. So because once you reflected and you've looked around yourself, you can then start building your own foundation, because there is a lot of frameworks, going back to the frameworks, there is a lot of frameworks exist in society which we adapt without thinking. Yeah. So I'm not that familiar with cognitive behavioral theory and whether that falls back on the framework. But if you adopted a certain framework because it was told to you, you can question it in your older life by reflecting on the situation around you, and then build the one that you're comfortable with. Yeah, that comfortable with and that sits comfortably with your own financial situation. And that way you can start dislodging between the emotional connection to the money and actually start controlling your own your own finances. But it's a very difficult thing to do. So it takes a lot of practice, like with anything.
I'll definitely agree with Volga. I mean, I it has taken me a long amount of time to understand my emotional relationship with societies, with countries, with religion, and family values that are they're very different between different societies. And until you look at it, these things very objectively, you won't understand it. The same goes with our relationship with money. You, as Olga just suggested, you have to look at it objectively, aside from you, as you together, and look at it from a rational, critical manner, and you will understand it. CBT, I'm not very familiar with,
Yeah,
so
that's not
I
something.
will not make comment on that.
But it's, I think, I think there is a therapies and coaching, and I think there is a sort of this emerging pattern in all the stories that we've got frames built in us, and finances is no different. We've got the frames from our culture, from our parents, from our religion, and the situation that we quite often end up in our own life might be different where those frames don't work. So what you can do is you can definitely pull on those frames and ask whether they work for you now, and quite often you'll find that they perhaps not working, or they're not working well. So
That's a
we've got
very
the
interesting question. Sorry, Olga. This is a really great question. Whose responsibility is it to lead on breaking the stigma around tackling financial health? The answer, my presentation was focused on an individual, but if you look beyond that, we have systematic problems with why people are poor. Okay, I will not get into the detail. We have systematic problems of why people get paid less and less based on their race, based on their gender, based on where they come from, and so on. I'm not getting into that for the timing, but the responsibility lies with us. I know one thing for certain: wherever we need a significant change in how we do things in our society, it does not come from the top. Corporations are not going to do it for you. Governments are not going to do it for you, because this is against their own wish. If all of us think twice before spending our money and stop buying all those unnecessary things, we will stop a lot of social problems, environmental problems that we have. They don't want us. Think about it. The only thing that our government and my kids' school talk about is recycling. They never talk about don't buy in the first place. Why does that happen? The top bit of stopping this entire problem is think, don't buy. The second is reuse. Third is recycle. But we do is talk about recycle. We don't talk about reusing. We don't build charities for it. We don't do activities for it. All we do is for recycling. What happened to the top two? The top two are not our concern, because that is not in the interest of churning the money in our society in a very fast manner. So we have to do it as an individual. It's for us. Start talking to your friends, people who you are comfortable with, and the more we talk about it, the much easier it will be for all of us to manage about our money and remove those systematic problems that we may have.
I think I'm going to add to that one. It's quite interesting because it's health. You've been pointed financial health, but there was a interesting cartoon where people, there is a queue for the surgeries to sort their physical health. Well, changing the lifestyle, there is advice. There is no queue. So it's a little bit here as well. In the end of the day, it's health of an individual. And the society can put certain mechanism to work on those. And there is a big debate that actually, while we're still in a capitalist society, those mechanisms are never going to exist because the capitalist society is built on profit maximizing. But that's a whole topic, a whole new topic for the debate. So going back, if you want to improve your financial health, it's your financial health, it's in your hands. And of course, yes, it's not that easy because the system will butter you all the time, because there is the marketing that is designed to make you buy. There is the frameworks in the society that makes you want to become bigger and better and get that shopping adrenaline. So you have to work within yourself. But inevitably, if we can change it within ourselves at the grounds, there'll be some bigger changes. But I think in education, that's probably there is a space for financial health discussion, especially at the younger age children. Sorry, that was my opinion.
Thank you very much, everyone. Great
Thank you.
questions. I'm very happy that I have made people think. That was the intention. Thank you. Thanks,
Yeah,
Olga.
and there is
Thanks,
some good
everyone in
literature
the
available. on the topic which was mentioned in Mohammed's thing. Thanks, Mohammed, for the presentation. A lot of theory behind the way we behave. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.